just as I thought I was done with the 2023 season of Battlebots, they've come in and given us Vengeance in Vegas 2 with 10 extra fights. There's not much to say, as the fights are generally disconnected from the rest of World Championship 7 and Champions 2, so we're just going to jump straight into the review. This is the review of Battlebots Vengeance in Vegas 2. Let's do this! Now first up we got Hydra versus Rusty. Finally, we get to see the return of Rusty in the battle box. Now the battle begins with Rusty wielding a chainsaw and a katana, and as they drive around, it seems they might have some driving issues. I guess they spent too long studying the blade. Not that it matters, as Hydra easily flips them over, sending the chainsaw flying off of them and even denting Rusty's head. Hydra continues flipping Rusty all around the battle box, and I can't help but notice all the editing that, in my opinion, breaks the flow. My best guess is they're trying to make up for the fact Chris and Kenny aren't there, but the constant pauses to show flip height definitely messed with the pacing and the glass break effect. Okay, I found it funny, I really can't complain. Anyway, after throwing Rusty at the team's box, Hydra finally leaves Rusty to be counted out. One other complaint I may have is the number taking up so much screen estate, flashing in a way that I feel may be a problem for some viewers with photosensitive epilepsy, but I'm also not an expert in that field, so I may be getting up in arms over nothing, but I don't know, it just seemed like it was flashing a bit too much, perhaps? I really don't know, though. Still though, the fight itself was a fun one. Obviously Rusty is more of a joke robot than anything else, so going up against one of the more prominent flippers in Battlebots was only ever going to go one way, but that's exactly what I came for, and I was still entertained watching it all happen. Next up we had Mammoth versus Pitops, and they waste no time here. Mammoth ends up lifting Pitops a little bit, but doesn't make much of it, followed by a glancing spinner shot from Pitops that doesn't really amount to much. Then a close back and forth as the spinners soon start colliding. Pitops' ribcage starts to break, but then Mammoth's spinner begins to buckle under the pressure. Pitops, for a rookie, has a decently mean spinner, as it soon even begins causing themselves to gyro about. Sure, they aren't quite getting the killer blows of some of the top spinners, but the damage they're racking up is causing Mammoth's offense to be more and more useless, as they have parts of the giant lifter littering the battle box. Then as Mammoth is barely holding together, Pitops manages to get a suplex in. Despite being nearly cut in half by Pitops, in the next exchange, Mammoth keeps on going, even managing to flip Pitops over when it appears to have an endgame moment, getting its fork stuck in a kill saw slot. The fight ends up going the distance, but to no one's surprise, Pitops ends up getting the win. Honestly, I really like what Pitops is doing. For a rookie season, they've already proven that their robot has a decent spinner on it, some pretty good suplexing ability that I feel even some veterans can struggle with. I think it's just overall, as they continue to refine this robot, it could be a generally entertaining and competitive machine in future seasons. Next up was Gruff versus Slammo. It's two compact control bots, but there is a twist this time, as Gruff is actually coming out with a hammer attachment. I think this is like the first time we're seeing it, at least this season, as I don't recall Gruff pulling out this hammer before. Now the fight begins, and Slammo's drive is being dodgy again, right at the beginning of the fight. Gruff goes in and swings the hammer as Slammo tries its best to find its footing. Gruff meanwhile keeps the aggression going, though ends up having to dodge a lift from Slammo, as Slammo then is sent to the pulverizer, and ends up having to deal with two hammers slamming down on it. Sadly for Slammo, it seems there isn't much they can do. If their drive was functional, they might be able to do some more, but Gruff's forks have an easier time getting under Slammo's wedgelet, and Slammo just hasn't got enough maneuverability to get itself in a better position. Slammo ends up getting pinned near the screws as Gruff goes wild with the hammer, which, honestly, the hammer itself isn't too bad, seeing as how Gruff is typically a control robot. Which they do show that control side when they use the hammer like a grabber, holding Slammo in place as they torch them with that flamethrower. Despite everything, Slammo has continued to endure, unfortunately not really able to do much else though. It manages to hold out till the end as the judges end up giving the fight to Gruff. Now this isn't an especially entertaining fight, but Gruff certainly can't be faulted for that, as they went out of their way to give the best fight they really could in this situation. I definitely hope we get to see more Hammer Gruff in the future, because they weren't too bad, honestly. Next up was Death Roll versus Rotator. Rotator in this fight comes out forks first, while Death Roll works around Rotator, hitting the wheel guard. Unfortunately for Death Roll, their weapon is one and done right there, giving Rotator the opportunity to land a mighty shot on Death Roll in return. For a moment I was worried that Rotator Spinner had gone down as well, but soon it was back up to speed and landing some colossal shots on Death Roll. Honestly, at several points, as reliable as Death Roll has usually been, I was sure it would be KO'd, but it did keep persisting for a while. Unable to do anything, however, as Rotator kept chipping away at it before using its forks to pin Death Roll for a good while against the wall. Once they broke away, Death Roll had finally given up the fight, the Croc getting counted out. Not a crazy fight, but not too bad either, with some nice damage in from Rotator. Death Roll definitely had a rough time of it though, being somewhat uncharacteristically unreliable. This was definitely just a dud fight for them, as they got taken out handily by Rotator. They end up taking a small break to advertise the Battlebots Destructathon, which honestly I think would be a good idea to check out. The event in general seems like fun, even if it's not typically as hard hitting as the main show, but you also might get to see the Battlebots Proving Ground, potentially getting to see the next big Battlebot before they even enter the season, which sounds like an exciting prospect personally. Maybe someday I'll go if I ever end up having the spare cash to fly, because it would be fun to get to see it in person rather than just through the videos that I get to see posted online. After that though, we end up with the next fight, which is Double Tap versus Quantum. And this definitely felt like another Hydra versus Rusty situation, as the fight wasted no time, with Quantum easily deflecting spinner blows and chomping down on that futuristic looking chassis. I've heard the Double Tap team welcome crazy damage like in the beta fight, and they definitely seem to be getting that, with Quantum easily chowing down. Also, I gotta say, I was appreciative to see Double Tap using their extending flail spinner, even if one part did end up getting knocked off by the pulverizer. Quantum does what it does best throughout this fight, crushing through armor like it just doesn't even exist, and ramming Double Tap into every single part of the arena, into the walls, into the screws, into the pulverizers, you name it. Shockingly, despite how unbalanced the spinner is, every moment Quantum breaks away, you can see Double Tap trying to spin it up and actually getting some decent speed in. I had to admire the gutsy performance despite how inevitable defeat was at this point. Now the fight nearly went the distance, only if because Quantum just did not seem to want the fight to end anytime soon, but in the end, Double Tap was finally left alone to be counted out. Now I compared this fight to Hydra versus Rusty before, and I'd say similarly, while very one-sided, I got exactly what I was looking for out of this fight, and was thoroughly entertained. Next up was Flipper versus Hammer, as Lucky took on Beta. This was definitely a fight I was interested in. Beta came in with a nice hammer swing, but the forks of Lucky allowed them to easily get under Beta and start throwing them around. In fact, after Beta gets stuck and on the wall and has to throw themselves off with a hammer swing, a problem becomes evident where Beta's hammer is struggling to retract. Still, it's kind of like what happened in Champions 2 when free shipping had the problem. In fact, we end up nearly having the exact same situation, as after both robots show some more aggression, Beta is flipped over and stuck in the exact same position that cost them the tournament run in Champions 2. Thankfully, Lucky kept the fight going, and Beta kept persisting, though after a few more situations, it was clear that Beta was just struggling to continue. Lucky eventually left them beached up against the wall and the shelf, where they were finally counted out. Overall, a decent fight, but I definitely wish Beta didn't have these troubles heading in, as these are two Battlebots I really enjoy seeing, and it could have been a great back and forth to make a fun fight, had both robots been working at 110%. But, oh well, either way, Lucky, working beautifully, and I'm loving this. I'm loving this new lease on life Lucky is having. After that, we got Kraken versus Scorpios. Now this fight I was definitely curious to see unfold. Scorpios is coming out with the saw blade that I definitely missed coming from the hammer saws, but it meant that Kraken would end up having the more powerful weapon. Now the fight begins, and Scorpios manages to get around and under Kraken, not allowing them to get their weapon into play. Scorpios brings the saw down for a glancing blow before the more decisive move happens, a ram into the screws. With that, Kraken's weapon pulls them up and into the screws, where Kraken is completely stuck, unable to escape, and are soon counted out. Now there's not a whole lot to say about this fight other than the Scorpios team knew what they were up against and strategized very well with just an amazingly efficient knockout. I'm happy to see the saw blade chosen over the hammer saw, as while I get the evolution, I still think the saw has some perks and usability in the arena. After this, we got a battle of the chainsaws as Dumba took on Overhaul. Now the fight begins as Overhaul clearly has no drive on one side, meaning Dumba has to come over as they start swatting chainsaws, which soon quickly start falling apart. As soon as Overhaul starts picking on the mini-bots, however, Dumba gets that undercutter going and brings the pain down on Overhaul, who ironically seems to actually be moving better afterwards. Dumba then also ends up taking out its frustrations on one of the mini-bots, which was kinda funny. Like, it almost seemed like that at first they were spurred on, but then it just becomes a thing of, no one gets to bully the mini-bots but me! Now, with all pretenses of a chainsaw fight out the window, Overhaul rams into Dumba and then lifts them up into the air. Now, while the chainsaw is making lifting harder, it certainly isn't impossible as evidenced here. Now, I didn't notice this at first, but when Dumba was rammed into the shelf, Dumba's undercutter ended up coming off entirely. It just happened with such little issue that it didn't even register to me, even though I was watching the match. Not to worry though, as Overhaul would end up shedding a wheel in solidarity. Then another one, returning them back to only having half of their drive as the fight comes to a close. As Dumba somehow is knocked over, I actually blinked there, I didn't see what happened. Now the fight ends up going to Dumba in a split decision, and overall, honestly this fight was a bit of a mess, but a chaotic mess. A mess that I kind of expected, and I don't know, like, if you're hoping for big hits, this won't be the fight for you, but if you want to see something just really silly, this might be up your alley. I can't say I didn't get what I was expecting. It gives me vibes of that steel chair fight I saw at Robo Games with Banana Run versus Banana Runs. It's silly, you're not going to get like these major hits, but it's just a fun, silly time. After that though, it's time for Malice to take on Captain Shredderator, with Shredderator coming out with their little wings on top to get better reach. And as they spun up, it felt like they were barely holding themselves together, which is made very evident when the spinners clash as Shredderator's spinner stops, only making whining noises as they try to get some life from the shell. Malice keeps on dishing out punishment to Shredderator, which is deflecting the blows rather well with their slope design, but clearly internally are not having the same luck, as the robot is barely moving, only really able to just sit there and take the offense from Malice, who is running like a dream throughout this fight. Now, there really isn't much else to note throughout this fight. We briefly see the pulverizer here and there. Malice keeps smacking Shredderator, who is struggling but won't quite die. Malice's weapon does eventually die towards the end, and Malice ends the fight beached on top of Shredderator, who could barely move without an extra 250 pounds weighing them down. The fight goes to the judges, who give it to Malice in what is definitely the weakest fight of the video. I don't know, Malice has had better matches where it dominated. This didn't do as much for me as some of the other squash fights in this. I don't know, this didn't do much for me. And in what I guess we can call the main event for Vengeance of Vegas 2, at least it's the final fight of the video, we got Bloodsport versus Big Dill. This one I was very curious about. On one hand, Bloodsport could do some major damage to Big Dill, but Big Dill just needed to flip Bloodsport over. So this fight definitely had my curiosity piqued. Now the fight began and Bloodsport quickly got up to speed, as Big Dill at first seemed hesitant, playing very defensively at first, But soon began the chase, though one blow ends up completely ripping Big Dill's spinner system out. The fact that Bloodsport did that so easily is just frankly astounding. Now despite this and the force on Big Dill bending more and more as time went on, Big Dill kept pursuing Bloodsport, chasing them around, and soon with one almighty ram nearly completely cave in the upper section of Bloodsport. Still, everything Bloodsport needed up there is still intact as they keep spinning and doing further damage to Big Dill, who keeps the aggression high, while Bloodsport kinda dances around, trying to keep their spinner going. Soon with another round, Bloodsport's weapon is taken out by Big Dill, who continues chasing after them, with Bloodsport now struggling to do much as they are soon sent into the screws. As the fight ticks down, Bloodsport does manage to catch on fire, which doesn't look good for them as the fight goes to the judges, who give the fight to Big Dill! Honestly, I gotta agree with the judge's decision. This fight was an incredible back and forth, don't get me wrong, but Big Dill, I feel, scored pretty well in all three categories. Sure, Bloodsport did more damage, but Big Dill was pretty good there in my opinion, getting some notable damage, taking out the weapon of Bloodsport. They were plenty aggressive throughout the fight, and I'd say they had more control. So I'd say Big Dill had an impressive performance here. And yeah, this was probably the best fight of the entire video, in my opinion. In fact, I hope we get to see this as a rematch in World Championship 8. Now, though we've reached the end of Vengeance in Vegas 2, we aren't quite done yet with this review. You see, there are two fights that weren't even shown in Vengeance in Vegas 2 that we're also going to review. Now, the original plan was I was going to save this for a members-only video, as I want to try and make little bonus stuff for the members, but as Christmas is getting closer and closer, let's just go in through them now. Now, the first of these two bonus fights is Banshee versus Horizon. Two rookie designs facing off here. Banshee has their anti-horizontal wedge, while Horizon has what must be the longest mini-bot on its side. Banshee races right out at the beginning of the match, but Horizon manages to dodge as they get some small shots in. But Banshee easily ignores all of that, pushing Horizon around the box as Horizon seems to struggle with their spinners, and soon with one notable flip, Horizon ends up stuck upside down on the screws. Now it seems like the fight is over right there, but after some chanting from the crowd, Banshee does try flipping Horizon a few more times, getting Horizon free, who thanks them the only way a Battlebot knows how, by blowing a chunk out of Banshee's armor. Banshee is driving around like it completely regrets its act of mercy, as the drive seems to be faltering as Horizon keeps going in for more. It almost looks like the drive dies completely for a moment before they go back again, though Horizon spinners aren't much longer for this world either, as they soon both die. With that, the two robots ineffectually bump into each other for the rest of the match, with Horizon having no weapon and Banshee not having enough drive to properly utilise their own. The judges end up needing to come in on this one. They go for a split decision for Banshee! Might be a bit controversial based on how the fight would unfold, but I think the earlier offense really helped Banshee out, and I'd still say they were still decently aggressive towards the end. Overall, it was a bit of a damp ending to a fight that looked quite promising in the beginning. I can only hope that both robots get another shot at each other as they refine their designs, as I think that this fight could genuinely be quite entertaining. Finally, we have Doom versus Samurai. Now, you don't know who Samurai is? Well, join the club. I didn't know about Samurai either, but Samurai is an undercutter spinner that flew in for World Championship 7 and unfortunately didn't get to take part in either the main competition or even Champions 2, only really getting this fight against Doom. And Doom, I'm pretty sure this was their only fight as well in 2023, so very interesting to see, really. Of course, both robots are looking to get into World Championship 8, so this is a good little early glimpse at these robots. Now the fight began with Doom chasing after Samurai, though it seemed they would soon give up the chase as the drive seemed to falter a little bit, and Samurai was just much too fast for them as they get their undercutter up to speed and soon slam into the wedge as a bit of one of the robots ends up flying off. Soon both spinners are spinning hard and make a monstrous clash, sending more metal across the battle box. Sadly for Doom, it definitely seems more worse for wear, looking a little bit twisted after that collision, as Samurai soon goes in for more damage on Doom. Samurai Spinner does seem slightly dodgier than Doom's as they keep needing to break away to get up to speed, but otherwise the bot seems really solid as they soon knock Doom out, getting the win. Honestly, I think both robots have some solid potential here. Samurai may not be the hardest hitter, but it seems to be for undercutters what Black Dragon is for vertical spinners, a reliable robot that can hit hard enough to get the job done. Doom, meanwhile, despite performances like this, is still a robot I hope to see reach its potential, as it just feels like a robot that could have some stellar performances if everything comes together. Overall though, this fight was fine, but nothing special. And on one final note, I know that for some people the editing for Vengeance in Vegas 2 could be a little bit too distracting. Fortunately or unfortunately, depending on how you look at it, you have to become a supporter of Battlebots in order to see the fights in their raw form. Think like the basement tapes that Battlebots used to post. So if you want to get around the way it's all been edited together, then that's the way to do it. Personally, I didn't find it to be too bad, apart from the occasional bits which were impossible to ignore, but I still found it overall an entertaining time, with some little bonus fights to keep me satisfied until the 2024 season. It honestly was a fun little time overall, and I gotta thank Battlebots for giving us a few little extra treats to keep us happy as we wait for the next grand season of Battlebots. And with that, we're, I believe, actually done now with the 2023 season. I will be doing a video later on about Battlebots Proving Ground in 2023, but aside from that, that's about it. It's overall been a fun time, and I'm so glad I got to make these videos as everything unfolded, and honestly, I can't tell you enough how super appreciative I've been for you all to come along for the ride. Thank you so much, seriously. This has been a crazy time for the channel, and it genuinely wouldn't be possible without all of you. Thank you again, and let me know in the comment section down below what you thought of Vengeance in Vegas 2. You can check it out on the YouTube channel, in all of its weird editing glory. And yeah, let me know what you thought. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like on the video. Subscribe for more. If you become a member, you'll get access to some bonus videos that I've been making. I'm hoping to post more bonus members only videos, but for now, at least, I'm focusing on posting quite regularly on throughout December. So that's gonna be the main priority. I stream on occasions. And yeah, if you can share this video around, that'd be also great. But for now, I hope to see you all tomorrow. Bye guys!